Hey, how you doing? Justin here for Tammy's third lesson with me. She had learned before. She'd had other teachers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well,
How long have you been playing
10
for?
years ago.
10 years ago you
I
had
haven't
lessons.
had a lesson.
Okay,
yeah.
but you've been playing for 10 years.
Yeah, just tab online and that kind of thing.
Yeah, a few people kind of said, wow, she's doing bar chords in the second lesson. It was like, nah, that's not quite the whole truth. I'd like to be that good a teacher, but I don't think anyone can play bar chords in the second lesson. So, how was your couple of weeks?
I've not been as consistent as I was last time.
Okay.
But I've covered everything we needed to cover. I've just not repeated it to the extent that it's just like straight off the bat now.
Cool. Okay. So, where shall we start? What was the first thing on your practice list?
I had to do your first 2 beginner lessons. So
On the first 2 beginner lessons of the theory.
Yeah.
Okay. And?
Yeah. So I had, at first it just didn't sit right at all.
Right.
And it felt...
What bit didn't sit right?
Just trying to just figuring it out. So you're learning on A, and then it was that moment where I was realising okay, well the string before is an E, so therefore you carry on round the circle from E, rather than me being like, well, if that's
the note circle. You're talking about,
note
right?
circle.
Okay, cool.
So yeah, and then learning that, you know, what's the sharps and the flats, and the fact that you can have a sharp and a flat at the same time.
Note. Yeah, okay. So like the note between F and G is called what?
F sharp.
Or?
G flat.
Good, okay. And between A and B?
Is A sharp or B flat.
Good, okay, you got it.
Yeah.
And between E and F?
There isn't one.
Good girl, that's the one. Okay, so yeah, that's really important, and that's going to make a big difference for all of our bar chord stuff. We're going to look at a couple of times using some bar chords today, so I want to incorporate them in with your open chord stuff. Yeah. How are you with knowing the notes on the bottom 2 strings then now? Particularly the thicker string. Can I point to any note and you can figure it out pretty quickly?
It's helped that to practice the bar chords we did the B, G, because then rather than kind of counting from the top, I can kind of think, okay, well I know that's G, so.
Yeah. Do you know what this note is here at the 12th fret?
A.
Huh?
A.
On the thicker string?
Oh,
what's this note, the open string?
E.
Right, so the 12th fret is also E, okay, because it's 12 steps around the note circle. So if you ever trying to calculate like that note on the thicker string at the 11th fret, you don't have to count from anywhere, you're just going to go from E, one back from E will be...
E flat.
Or?
F.
No.
D sharp.
Good, okay. One thing that I mention it in the course, a lot of people don't bother about doing it. You can practice it anywhere, and it's saying the alphabet backwards.
Yeah.
Right? Because it feels, for all of us, to go backwards from A to G, most people, if you've never done music before, going like G, F, E, D, C, B, A is weird.
Yeah.
It's just like, we're so used to saying the alphabet forwards since we were like 2, that saying it backwards is weird. But it'll really help with that sort of thing. The further on down the theory course you get, it'll become more and more useful. So
every string on that double dot
is the same as the
higher.
Yeah, an octave, exactly, an octave higher than the open string was. Okay. Yeah? Did you get to the open string note names?
Yeah.
And?
Oh, forget E, A, D.
Yeah.
G.
Yeah.
B.
Yeah.
E.
Did you use a rhyme?
No. I just read through some of yours.
Try and pick one. Whatever one of mine will make up your own, but it'll really help. Just I used Easter Bunny Gets Drunk After Easter. That was the one that I learned when I was like, I don't know, little, and I could always remember it. Okay. So just pick. It doesn't really matter, so long as it's one that you can paint a little picture of and remember, and just use. The trick is not to try and chop and change it. Just pick one, and that's the one that you're going to use for that particular thing. Okay. Yeah. Okay. How far did you get on the 5th string? Notes on the 5th string. So the 6th string, we used the B, the A and the G in that chord progression. How did you get on? Have you even looked at the notes on the A string?
No, probably not as much.
Right, okay.
As in, like, I could tell you what each one was.
You could look at what each one is if you count up from A, right?
Yeah.
But I also want you to learn it at the 7th fret, the 5th fret and the 3rd fret.
Okay.
Right? There's a couple of approaches to doing it. You can just remember that from the A, if you count it up, an A sharp, B, C, D, and E. Okay?
Okay, that's easy.
Yeah, it's still the alphabet, right?
Yep.
Or you can look at it in each fret, which is one of the things that it's taught in the theory courses. To remember, it's the 3rd fret, G and C, and then I use grey cats. So you picture 3 grey cats sitting on the fence. I know it seems really weird, but it really helps a lot of people. Then 5 able digits, A D. So 5th fret, A D, 5 fingers, able digits. Okay, I know that's really cheesy and crappy, but I can think of a better one. And 7. B-E, beautiful elephants. The elephants are wearing a little coat with the days of the week on it. The days of the week just helps you remember it's the 7th. But trying to do this little pictures using mnemonics to try and help you remember things like that can be really helpful. Or you can just remember it. It's up to you. Yeah. But the first big task for next week is the notes on the thickest 2 strings. Anywhere between here and there, I want you to be able to name the note within a couple of seconds. So I don't mind you counting. I just don't, if I point to this one, I don't want you counting from here. Right?
Yeah.
So C, D, and E.
Yeah.
Okay?
G, A, and B.
G, A, and B.
Okay.
Yeah? Anything like C, D, E. E is the same as the open string.
Yeah.
You already know F, G, A, B.
Yeah.
If that's B, there's C again. Yeah? So just have a little think. It doesn't hurt to write a couple of lines for the strings and make your own neck diagram. Write the notes on just so you can start to see the relationship. You'll see that kind of diagram over on the theory course as well.
It helped definitely just doing like the chord that I knew as well versus the chord that I'm not learning. So.
Excellent. Okay,
and
so
hearing it they're the same.
You'll find it with the C chord as well. If you play a C chord, there's the C. Yeah?
Okay,
That's on that note on the 5th string. That's the one. That's the note C. Just play your C chord again. Okay. Try not to let that thicker string ring out. I heard you do it before when we were just doing a little sound check for you. So try and get the 3rd finger just to touch that string ever so slightly. That's it. It only takes, that's it, the tiniest touch with that finger, but you want to train that finger to always be touching that string.
Come across.
Playing the open string can sound really cool if you're going like from a C chord to get to an F chord or something like that, but just it's just kind of, if you're doing it accidentally, it just makes it sound a little bit wonky. And the easiest way to do it, you've got to train that finger every time you play a C chord to think that finger's got to touch that string as well.
Slip across a bit.
The alternative is the way they used to play C back in the 60s, is to move that finger onto the thicker string and put little finger where 3rd finger was.
Oh.
That's it. Yeah? So that's also a way of playing C chord. I'm back now. So the old way of playing C chord, play a regular C chord first. That's it. 3rd finger goes over to the thicker string. Pop it over, 3rd finger. Little finger goes underneath. That's it. That's actually a really, really nice way of playing C. You can hear if I just play regular and then I add that bass note. Here it just sounds kind of fatter and bigger.
Yeah.
And it's really, the other nice thing about it is going to F chord, you're just shifting all of those fingers down. The 1st finger lays down a bit.
Yeah.
So there was quite a lot of stuff in the 60s where you had this kind of movement, you know, it was pretty common. So you can choose which one of those or both of them.
Yeah.
And that kind of ties a little bit into the next thing I'd like to talk about. So thing 1 on your homework thing is the notes on the thickest 2 strings.
Yep.
I want to be able to point to any one within a couple of seconds. You're going to be able to name it for me for next week.
Okay.
Yeah. So the next thing I want to talk about is the complicated fancy name for it is called the cage system, but don't get scared about it being some really complicated thing. I just want you to understand that there are only really 5 shapes that we use on the guitar, and everything is a derivative of one of those 5 shapes. Those 5 shapes are C, A, G, E, and D. Caged. C-A-G-E-D. That's why it's called the cage system. It's got nothing to do with putting people in cages. It's just they're the 5 chord shapes.
Okay.
Every chord can be played in all 5. What? Okay, another interruption. Really sorry. It's like Delivery Central here today. So cage system is the 5 shapes, and every chord can be played 5 different ways. So if we looked at like the C chord, we could play C chord using the C shape. This bar chord, can you see that's kind of using an A chord shape? That shape looks like that A chord, right?
Yeah.
So it can also be played using like a G chord. You're not going to be playing it like that, right? Anytime soon. There's your E shape that you already know. and there's like a D chord. See? Yeah?
Okay.
So that's C, A, G, D, D. They're all C chords.
Okay.
Right? Now, the reason I'm explaining all of that is because I want you to be aware of when we're going through the different chord grips and the variations and things that you can do, that there's only 5 grips that you have to worry about.
Yeah.
5 is much more manageable. People think there's like millions of chords, and there's not millions of chords. They're all little variations of the 5, and if you relate everything back to those all the time, it'll help you remember all of the different chord shapes.
Okay.
Yeah? So, in our exploring of chord grips so far, we already looked at C chord, didn't we? With the lifting fingers off.
Yep.
And all of that sort of stuff. We looked at D chord.
G.
G.
Yep.
And was that it? A minor? Did we do A minor as well?
E.
E minor. Okay. So, we haven't done then A, correct?
No.
Okay, so you know how to play A. That's A major. Now, just so you're aware, so this is another little side departure thing that I want to explain to you. Have we talked about why it's important to put fingers right next to the frets? Have we talked about that?
Yeah, you mentioned
Did we
that
do
in the
that
first
little
one.
thing where we put the finger in the fret and we press really lightly near
Yes,
it? Yeah?
yeah.
So when you play an A chord like that, the first finger has to be very far away from the fret, right? So there's another way of playing it where you put second... That's exactly... Now, if you do that, you've got 2 fingers right next to the fret, so those 2 notes are going to come out better, and that finger can kind of sneak up there in the middle, and that'll be a lot closer, well, at least not further away than it used to be. Now, if you've learned the A chord the other way, I'm not going to try and force you into playing it this way, but I want you to explore it at least. For beginners, for real beginners, it's a bit easier as well because you're going from the A chord into the D chord. First finger can stay where it is. Going to an E chord, it can just slide back. So there are a few advantages to this shape, exactly. You can see that the kind of morphs easily from one to the other. You don't have to do it, like I said, if you've been learning for 10 years already the old way, it's going to be a bit difficult to change. But be aware of it, because there's not really a set rule for how you got to play any of the shapes, right?
Okay.
As you develop more and more, you'll find that you use all kinds of wrong fingerings for chords, and it's totally fine. Yeah? I'm going to show you another A chord as well, because I think you're ready for it, and that is just to play A chord with the first finger. That's it. That's the one. And all you want to do is just make sure you don't play that thinner string. So relax the first finger. Can you see the way my finger goes a little bit up? That knuckle comes forward just enough for that string to be muted. That's it. That's the one. Try not to get all of those fingers. You shouldn't need that much support for that one. That's it. That's all we want. Let's get thumb around a little bit more as well. Right, bring it right around the top. I'm going to explain something else to you in a second as well. There we go. There you go. That's another way of playing A. Yeah? Particularly if you got fast chord changes. Now you can see I'm playing D like this, A that way on the way down, E, but then I'm using a different fingering for A to go.
Whatever fits.
You can use whatever's working well for you for the tune. The same with the G chord when we had G that way, G that way, G that way, G that way. We've got all of these different Gs and they all work and they're all fine.
Yeah.
Okay, you use the one that's right or the easiest one for the tune, or the one that sounds best later on is probably the best choice. Yeah? Do you know how to play, staying on A, do you know putting little finger down 1 fret higher, whichever fingering you like? There we go. You played that before? A sus 4.
A sus 4, yeah, I was going to say, couldn't remember the name, but yeah.
Yeah, and then lift off third finger, so lift off little finger as well, that's it. And that one is A sus 2, okay? You'd use that one with the A sus 4 and the A sus 2 and the D. Do you remember D sus 4 and D sus 2?
Yeah.
D sus 4 and sus 2. So they're the chords that you'd need to play, like Summer of '69 by Bryan Adams and those kind of classic hit tunes. Okay, so sus chords are a really good one for the A. You can again lifting off second finger. You can lift off first finger. You get an A7 chord, which is just another different sound that you can use for blues and stuff like that. So lifting off the different fingers is something just to explore with the A. A minor, do you remember A minor? That's the one. Okay, same thing, sus4 still works. So little finger down, you can change from A minor to A sus4, go back to A minor, lift off first finger, there you go. Yeah, and you can experiment with lifting off those other two fingers just as you're exploring your different chords.
Okay.
Yeah?
Yep.
So we looked at C, we looked at A, we looked at G already, we looked at D already, we looked at E minor. We didn't really look at E much.
No.
So give us a look at E. For E, you've got all of the same options for lifting off second finger, lifting off third finger, just as like little ornaments. Lifting off first finger, if you're on E major, gives you E minor. And you don't normally use that as a kind of an ornament unless you're doing a bluesy, like that kind of sound, which for the sort of music that you're playing, I don't really see you doing the straight bluesy sort of thing.
Not yet.
But yeah, hopefully we'll explore a little blues at some point. But so you probably don't want to be lifting off first finger. Little finger sounds great on the thinnest two strings in the second fret. So having... That's it. So just on the E. There's all these little melody things that you can come up with for song ideas.
Yeah.
Yeah?
I think it's like, that's quite a new concept for me, that you don't actually need to change to a different chord. You
To
just
make up
move
some
fingers.
interesting... Yeah. So your task, your kind of... The thing that I'd like you to have a bit of a work on this week, which I'm hoping will be a really fun project for you, and we're going to talk a bit more about this second part of it. But I want you to try and write some chord progressions where the chords aren't changing a whole lot, so not trying to do like really fancy fast chord practice, because I want you to practice your rhythm as well, but I want you to record it.
Okay.
And I want you to explore it. Consciously go, right, I'm going to spend 10 minutes now and I'm going to try and come up with an interesting sequence of chords. I'm going to talk a little bit about chords in a key later on, but I don't want you to worry about it too much. I just want you to muck around with the chord shapes and go, what happens if I lift this finger off? What if I lift that one off? What does it sound like? And just try and find stuff that you like the sound of.
Okay.
I'm not bothered about it being right, like theory stuff. I just want it to sound, for you to think it sounds cool.
Okay.
Yeah, but I want you to try and find... You don't have to just do one. I want you to come up with as many as different chord progressions as you can. But try and use all 5 of the shapes. So
Okay.
C, A, G, E and D. And just spend a little bit of time exploring each one. Make sure that you know your major and minor for each one except for C and G. Because there isn't a G. Well, they're kind of... You can kind of do a G minor open if you want, but it's really awkward and it's just like nobody ever plays it.
No.
And the same as the C minor, you can do a C minor 7 kind of thing like this, but it's just...
It doesn't look fun.
It doesn't really work. Okay, so you need G and C are majors, and the A minor, A, D and E, and major and minor of those 3.
Okay.
Make sense?
Yep.
They're the ones that I want you to focus on. So we're going to deal with F chord and mix that into the fray next week or
Okay.
next session. So that leads us to strumming,
Yep.
strumming with a metronome,
Yep.
and playing in time and strumming patterns and all that sort of stuff. So, first of all, strumming with a metronome. How did
Yeah.
it go? What happened?
Hard.
Hard?
I definitely naturally play faster
Okay.
than the metronome, and slowing down felt really unnatural.
Mm-hmm.
And then if I tried to start changing chords or lifting fingers on and off, then I definitely started speeding up naturally as well. So yeah, I had to put it on really loud, because as soon as I tried to complicate it, I would just kind of forget about the metronome and just instinctively be playing.
Don't complicate it to start off with.
Yeah.
A great place for putting you're using the phone, metronome on the phone.
Yeah.
Just stick it in the little part of the guitar here. It'll just sit there. It
So
doesn't
it's
work with
right
electric
behind
guitar, but on acoustic guitar you can just pop it there, so you shouldn't have a trouble hearing it
Yeah.
then. Learning to play with the metronome is a skill that you have to practice. It's like everything else, like chord changes and everything.
Yeah.
There's very little for free on guitar. You have to generally practice each different idea.
Yeah.
But being able to play with a metronome for what you want to do, singer-songwriting, doing some recording, playing with other people, being able to play in time is really a big deal. It's possibly the biggest deal. If you fluff chords up, people won't notice so much. But if you fluff the rhythm up,
The time.
even non-musicians notice when the chords when the rhythm go wrong.
Yeah.
If the chords go wrong, it doesn't. A lot of people won't even notice, or you could think it. They might think it was deliberate, that you're deliberately lifting some fingers off to do some creative thing. When the rhythm goes wrong, everybody notices, right? Mm-hmm. So playing just with a metronome and trying to lock in, staying on the one chord, not even playing a chord and just strumming muted strings is really good practice.
Yeah.
But it can get a bit boring. And one of the things that the battles that you have to kind of figure out for yourself is how much of the really boring vegetables can I eat versus having a hamburger or whatever, which is going to be playing and writing tracks in the studio or in your home studio. The big thing about recording yourself with the chord, because this is the idea, you're going to make up these chord progressions and then you're going to practice playing the chord progression into Logic.
Yeah.
So you put the headphones on, you put the click on, and then you practice playing that chord progression. You're really concentrating on your time, though, and that's why I said to you it's really important. I don't want you to do lots of chord changes, because I want you to be able to concentrate on the rhythm. Mm-hmm. There's a heap of different advantages and things that happen when you do that. One, you can listen back to yourself. Mm-hmm. Now, at the moment you're saying, I have a tendency to rush, right? That's quite common. It's more common for people to rush than to lay right back. When you've recorded yourself and listened back, you'll start to really hear if there's obvious places where you're doing, like you already said, like when I lift the fingers off, I notice that I rush. So that'll become like even more obvious. Like, I do that every time. So therefore you become more conscious of the things that you need to work on. It becomes more fun as an event because you're recording yourself, and it might be a tune. It might grow into a great song. It's something you can jam along with. You can practice doing layers and all sorts of stuff. So it's a little less dry than just practicing playing clicks with a metronome. Yeah. I think there's value to that as well. So you have to decide. I'm going to leave it to you to think about, can I deal with 5 minutes of just doing with the metronome, or like maximum I can do is 2 minutes, or I hate that so much I'm never doing it again now that he's given me another option, right? So when you're doing it yourself in the studio, you need to make sure that you can hear your guitar and the click in your headphones. So you need to figure out the routing within Logic of where it's how it's coming through. You also need to, there's a thing called latency. Are you aware of what latency is? Have you heard of it?
I think so.
It's the time that it takes for a microphone to record your guitar to go into the computer, the computer to do whatever stuff it needs to do before it comes out your headphones. Because what you need to be careful of is training yourself to play with a latency in time, because it'll always feel a little bit wonky and late. So just be aware of that. You might find that you have a low latency mode that you can turn on. I don't know what your sound card is. I know with Universal Audio stuff, there's like it routes it essentially in real time so that there's so little latency that you can't notice it. But you need to be, if it feels like really wrong, then you need to figure that out and either call me and go, these are the button options I've got, what is there to do, or you need to do, why have I got latency on this, that kind of thing. So I'll just turn that off. Hang on. Sorry. So do it, recording yourself like that is going to be the fun version of doing the strumming stuff. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah? Did you notice any other problems with the strumming in time or strumming with the metronome thing?
When I started creating the patterns, like you were saying, like picking out what you're going to strum, I had to just play every single one with the metronome to start with to kind of get the timing in my head, and then after doing that a few times around, I could start to pick out. With the creative one?
Yeah. Okay, but not with the just straight. We'll talk about the creative one in just a second. So just with the straight, playing with the metronome. Bouncing with my right foot, I still do, like naturally. Yeah. And I have to actually think about bouncing with my left. Yeah. I don't feel like I'm in time with my left. I have to like make it in time. Whereas my right kind of just goes with it. See, a few people told me off on YouTube saying, why are you telling her to not tap your right foot when I do it all the time? And there's loads of videos where I'm doing that and my guitar's bouncing up and down. Yeah. And the only thing I can say is that I think it makes more sense logically to tap your left foot. And if I'd thought about it or somebody had told me when I was learning, I would have just concentrated on that. Interestingly, when I play standing up, I don't tap either foot. I step side to side, which is, I don't know where that comes from, but it creates problems. I'm used to doing it now, and I guess my technique is usually enough that I can deal with it, the guitar bouncing up and down.
Yeah.
For sure, if I'm doing something really complicated, I'll either be tapping because the other option as well is tapping your toe in your shoe. So you don't have to be doing this big movement like this.
Yeah.
It can just be your toe in your shoe, and then your leg's not moving at all.
Yeah.
So if you find that the left leg thing is really difficult, then just think about moving your toe in your shoe, and instead of it having to be a whole, and not even this. It doesn't have to be like right off the ground. It can be literally your toe moving in your shoe.
Yeah.
Nobody even needs to see it, right? As long as you're feeling it, that's the important part.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. Creative strumming patterns. How did that go?
Good.
Fun?
Yeah, fun. I've definitely found some that were harder to pick up, and some that I created that as soon as I heard what they were, I didn't really have to look on the paper.
Good.
And then others that I just didn't feel natural at all.
So ditch the ones that don't feel natural. Unless you're deliberately trying to do something super creative, or there's a pattern that you want to fit with a particular drum groove or something like that, you don't need to work on doing the really awkward ones for what you're doing right now, I don't think. Right?
Okay.
For anyone out there doing like really complicated music or prog or fusion, then probably you want to find the weirdest ones that you can and really work on them.
Okay.
But for singer-songwritery sort of stuff, I think you're much better off just finding the patterns that feel natural and comfortable, and just working on making them feel good. So how did you find that aspect of it, rather than just getting the mechanics right and play it correctly? Did you find there was much of a shift between that and then really trying to make it feel nice?
Yeah, I'd say so, definitely. And there were times that I'd do it and I'd go, oh, that sounds a bit like, and it would like remind me of certain songs that I guess you don't really think about what they're doing with their strumming. You just know exactly what it sounds like, which helps me with my writing, because I have like patterns that I know I'd go to, whereas now I can definitely try to.
I want you to expand the ones that you would definitely go to, right? Okay. So that for a lot of people, if they've got a limited pool of strumming patterns when they go to write, that's their only options. Yeah. And it's really nice to be able, you might find that your writing can take on a whole new thing with the change of rhythm, because, you know, music is rhythm and melody. So if the rhythm's always the same, you've kind of cut out half of your options. Yeah. What's one pattern that you liked that you played? Did you write any out of ones that you liked or didn't like?
Yep. Yeah.
What you got?
So you can see them.
Okay.
Yeah, I quite liked this. The third one is the one that just didn't feel natural, that I found quite hard. It didn't sound bad.
Why is it hard? There's a really obvious reason why I can see straight away why it's hard.
It just felt hard.
What is the reason? There was one thing I said to you always, that we're always going to start with doing a certain thing.
One.
Okay. Right? Beat one is where we feel rhythm. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. If you take that away, it feels like a bit of a dip. It's a key ingredient in reggae music. They often don't play on beat one. The drums or the bass or whatever isn't there. Okay. Which is one of the kind of traits of that style. But for you, for strumming patterns, it's going to make it really awkward. So unless you're deliberately doing it because you're trying to do something creative, like an overdubbed part where you've got one rhythm and you want to do some sort of really creative thing with the other rhythm, in that case you might want to try dropping the one and deliberately challenging yourself to do something tricky. Otherwise, that is going to be hard every time. Yeah. Yeah? Okay. What's the one that you like then, of these ones?
Either of the top two, really.
Okay. Show me one. Good. Okay, that was the second one you've got there. What are the two so you've got to strum on every one except for?
2 and 4.
Okay, did we talk about 2 and 4 last time? Do you remember me mentioning 2 and 4? I might not have, I can't remember. 2 and 4 are called the backbeat. If you listen to like a normal drum pattern, you have the kick drum on 1 and 3 and the snare drum on 2 and 4. So you have this, excuse my awful beatboxing, but like do ga do ga do 2 4 1 2 and 4. So that pattern is a particularly good one because you're leaving a gap for that backbeat, and almost by leaving it off, it almost makes a backbeat. If you're doing like, if I add a backbeat in,
that reminded me of Proud Mary.
Exactly. It's super duper Proud Mary.
Yeah.
Right? But it's not just Proud Mary. Okay.
Yeah.
Really, really nice pattern. Yeah. Another one, if you're overdubbing with that, if you find yourself recording a thing, trying to just play on 2 and 4 with a second guitar part. So one guitar is doing the. Oh, you can do it actually. Do the da 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 da, leaving the 2 and 4. Yeah. It's a really nice little way of introducing this second guitar part, which was something we talked about, that you wanted to get into jamming and layering and all of that. So as you're experimenting with these patterns, if you're aware of the pattern that you're playing, because this is another little twist in it, when you're recording yourself, doing your exercise on you've created your little chord progression, you're practicing playing it with the metronome click and getting practice. You're going to listen back and hear where you're staying in time, where you're pulling, where you're dragging, all of that sort of stuff. If you wanted to, you could have a go at doing a second rhythm pattern that complemented it.
Okay.
Now, 9 times out of 10, you want to do that just by ear, by listening to one and just trying to play another one that feels nice or sounds nice. But it doesn't hurt to be able to write it down and look at it and go, well, those are the ones I'm missing out. What if I play on those ones? Or if I only play on some of the ones that I'm playing? You know, you can... There's no rules about creativity that you should or shouldn't think about it. So I generally prefer not thinking about stuff in creative environment, but sometimes it can make a really interesting thing to go, what was it that I was strumming? How can I do something that might fit with that?
I've done, like, without thinking about it, the basics of that, I guess. So like if I was doing a strumming pattern, I'd play over the top of it, just literally strumming on the 1, the 2 and the 3 and making that note louder, I guess, and making it simple.
Absolutely.
Simple
we
version.
haven't even got onto dynamics yet. That's a whole new, like how loud different strums are. We're going to tuck into that in a little while. But so that's another little aspect to that exercise. This is one that you can continue with, or you can let slide by the way, depending on how much you enjoy it, how much you're feeling when you're practicing the rhythm patterns. If you feel like it helps you stay motivated when you're practicing the rhythm to come up with new patterns, then do it. It's kind of not a bad idea to have like 10 that you like that feel good, rather than 1 or 2, which I don't know how many you had initially, but have a few of the ones that you really feel like these are naturally ones that I could go to all the time. And the only way they'll get to that is by practicing them. Right? So if you've only got 1 or 2, the reason you've got 1 or 2 is because those ones are ones you've practiced loads. So you need to expand on that by practicing new ones loads. Make sense?
Definitely.
Okay. Strumming is looking really good, by the way. Just I'm not saying I would have brought it up if there was some more stuff going wrong, but like the hand position is really good. It looks more relaxed now sitting on the... Do you feel like it's resting on the thing more?
Yeah.
It looked... The motion of it looked nice and relaxed. Playing with a pick, it's like...
I'm doing it now,
great. Like, do you ever play with the fingers at the moment, or are you only practicing with the pick?
Only when I'm kind of messing around with listening to the sounds of different strings.
And how does it feel to go back to playing with fingers?
Good. But I need to be careful that I don't get into the pattern of just using a pick when I'm strumming and then taking the pick away when I'm picking, because I know that I should be getting used to using it for both or neither. Yeah.
I think I said to you last week or the week before that it's a good idea to stick with the pick for a little bit, just so it becomes as natural feeling as the fingers. But especially when we get into the creative stuff and you're recording things, you know, maybe record one with the pick and one without the pick, then they'll sound different as well. So you can really explore stuff like that as much as you like. I don't want you to feel restricted that you only have to play with a pick now. I think you've conquered the pick enough to be able to go and explore both of them. I just remembered I forgot one thing. If you're going to do the layering idea of having 2 guitar, like playing with the click track, record 1 guitar and then listen back and play a second guitar part to that first one, still with the click, you want to make sure that the one that you've recorded is 100% in one ear. So use the pan, the left and right button, or it's usually like a knob. Press it, click it one way, so the old guitar is in one ear and the new guitar is in the other ear. Right? If they're both together in the middle, you'll find it really difficult to hear it. But when they're completely separated, left and right, it's really nice to be able to hear how well you're playing in time with the other one. If that one was pushing or dragging, probably you want to be pushing and dragging with it, because it's really important that the guitars are sitting together.
Yeah.
So keep them separated.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. We talked about the rhythm. We talked about the cadence system, exploring that, making up your own chord progressions, bar chords, and the chords in the key. Let's do chords in the key first. What is a key? What's playing in a key? Any idea?
A group of notes.
Yeah, a group of notes. From where? Usually?
A key.
A key. So you'll discover as you progress in the theory course that we generate chords by looking at notes in a scale and picking certain notes out of a scale to create a chord. When the easiest and most common place to start is with the major scale, and we build a chord off each degree of the major scale. So if the major scale in the key of C has C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, we build a chord off each one of those scale degrees. And when we analyze them, if we only use notes come from that scale, we find that there's a little pattern. And I'm not going to go into too much detail because I want you to do it on the theory course where it's nicely kind of laid out a bit at a time. But you would end up with a certain, pattern of chords, which is major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, diminished, major. The diminished chord we never use. And we apply that to the scale. We end up with this sequence of chords in a key.
Okay.
Now, rather than trying to go into too much detail before you've done the theory, I just want you to muck around with chords in the key of G.
Okay.
Chords in the key of G, a G major, A minor, B minor.
Yeah, I don't know that one. It's
Okay.
something funny, isn't it? Like up there.
Or kind of.
Is it like that one?
Okay. So, what chord shapes that? If we played that shape, hang on, go back to the one that you had, 3 fingers in a row. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, if I played, I'm a capo now, and you were playing that, what chord would that be?
A.
It's like an A chord, not an A minor chord.
No.
It's an A major chord.
Yeah.
How would you play that as an A minor chord? Okay, now re-finger that chord as if your first finger got chopped off in the war. There we go. Yeah, nearly.
And down.
That's it. Okay, so that's a minor chord. Now your first finger is going to is doing the capo's job.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Now, when you play an A chord, you generally don't want to play the thicker string, like the C chord. Yeah, with an A chord. It's not horrible. You can could deliberately play it, but you generally don't want it there.
Okay.
So with the B minor chord, that was it. Go back to B. There we go. So with the B minor chord, the first finger just wants to touch the thicker string. That's it. So you think about pressing down. Just move the first finger down a fraction. That's it. You're pressing down that note, but just like with the C chord, you want the tip of your first finger to touch it.
Oh, no.
That's it. Now, that's it. Try and keep there. Yeah, I know.
It's hard.
Yeah, I know it's hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Keep those 2 fingers together. So here's the little tips. I don't want to do B major yet, right?
Okay.
Because the way you were doing it is really awkward. There's a better way of doing it, but it's a bit harder. But the minor chord with the 5th string root, I want you to conquer that this week. So B minor again. That's it. Good. Now this is fairly easy because it's exactly the same as the shape that it would be on the thicker string, except you want to make sure the tip of the first finger is muting the thicker string. That's the only difference. The rest of it should be right. That's it. That's it. Good. It's not that hard. Exactly the same stuff applies in that the first finger's slightly rounded onto its side.
Yeah.
These fingers want to be a little bit straighter on, and these fingers the 3rd and 4th fingers want to sit together.
Okay.
Right? The reason that they want to sit together is it'll just help you form the chord nicely, especially as you start changing between different chords. You'll find that you want to help the chords change in the air. So can you see if I change to a G chord, already there's my G chord. It's already formed in the air. If I go to a C chord, there's my C chord. So eventually all of the chords want to form in the air before they change. And when you go to these ones, see the 3rd and the 4th finger are together already.
Yeah.
That's a really useful thing.
Okay.
So that's why you're trying to train them to be, it's kind of like, they don't have to be touching like pressing together, but they're feeling that the other one's there. Yeah?
Yeah.
So that's B minor chord, and that's the only one I want you to really be aware of for this week, because it's the only one you need for chords in the key of G.
Okay.
So again, the chords in the key of G are G, A minor, A minor.
Oh.
That's it. Really important, the major and minor thing, right?
Yeah.
B minor. That's it. Excellent. C chord. D. Go back to C chord. That's better. Okay. What I want you to do every time you play a C chord now, just kind of clock and just go, okay, was that string open or not?
Okay.
And if it's open, try and get that finger up there to touch it. That's the one. Yeah? Just that's a habit now that you need to just do it often enough that every time you do that, that finger's going to touch that string.
Okay.
Yeah?
Yep.
Again, C, that's not touching. There we go, C chord. Now D chord, major, that's it. Good. Now with D, which strings are we supposed to play and which strings aren't we supposed to play?
Not the top,
not the thickest two
strings.
strings. Okay. The fifth string sounds okay. Like with the A chord, we could play the thicker string and it was kind of okay. It wasn't horribly out of tune. It's actually a note in the chord.
Yeah.
Same with the D chord. This note is actually the same as this note. You can hear they're an octave apart. But because it's a D chord, we want really that D note, the open fourth string, to be the lowest note. Yeah? So what I want you to do is aim for only strumming the thinnest four, and if you accidentally hit the fifth string,
yeah,
no one's going to get hurt.
Okay.
But if you play the thicker string, the E note is
Yeah.
the lowest note on a D chord, it really doesn't sound nice.
Okay.
Yeah?
Yep.
So later on, you want thumb, yeah, that's it, thumb is going to reach out and just touch it. It only has to do the lightest touch. And I want to use this as a reason to explain something that you'll probably notice in my videos if you watch any of the beginner stuff, and that's when I'm teaching beginners, I insist that the thumb stays around the back of the neck. So when you're playing a D chord or an A chord or a G chord or whatever, thumb is here at the back.
Yeah.
If you watch me play, my thumb is always hanging around on the top, no matter what the chords are. Thumb is hanging around here. The reason that I teach beginners to keep the thumb around the back is to strengthen this muscle for playing bar chords.
Yeah.
But once you're through that and you can play bar chords, it's okay for thumb to start hanging around the top. In fact, for chords like D, it's really useful to be able to mute it and or even wrap around to play that F sharp note that you like so much on a D chord. Right? Just to start off with though, it only has to touch real lightly. Same with the A chord. If you can get first finger thumb to just hang around at the top a little bit more, that's it. That's it. It's just the lightest touch and that note's gone. So just start to be aware when you're playing things now about where feels comfortable for thumb to be and not to be strict about it having to be around the back of the neck. So things like C chord. C chord, when you put the thumb around the back, for me, it feels so awful for me to play it that way.
Yeah.
That's how I teach it, and it's how I think people should learn it. Right? So it's not like somebody taught you wrong if they taught you that way. It's good.
Okay.
But C like that, I mean, I can hold my guitar and play the C chord, because it's so much more natural to hold it that way than it is like that. It feels all kind of weird that way. Some people stay with keeping the thumb around the back, and that's not a bad thing either. Again, there's not really a strict right or wrong way of doing any of this stuff. It's what feels comfortable and what works for you. Yeah?
Okay.
So, the chords in the key of G, I'm going to write it down for you actually on your little practice sheet so that you remember. There were 3 major chords, that was G, C and D. And there were 3 minor chords, which were E minor, A minor and B minor. There's one other chord which is F sharp minor 7 flat 5, which you're not going to worry about because no one ever uses it anyway. Okay? Just in case somebody tells you, oh, there's 7 chords in the key, or people out there in YouTube land tell me off for not teaching you the whole thing. There are 6 chords in each key that get used commonly, and that's what they are in the key of G.
Okay.
So at least one of the times that you record you're exploring a track, I want you to only use the chords in the key. You can still use the variations, lifting fingers off, sus chords, all of that sort of stuff. But try and just use the G, C, D, E minor, A minor, B minor. Of the songs that you've played me of stuff that you like, most of them have been in G anyway. You'll find that there are hundreds and hundreds of songs that only use those chords.
And is that how people jam? When you know what key it's in and you know what chords come into the key?
Yes.
Ish.
Ish.
Okay.
Yeah. So it depends. Like if you're having a real free jam, you can play whatever you like. But that's a more advanced skill because I need to be able to... You can play whatever you like and I can play over the top because I can hear what you're doing, I can see what you're doing, I can see, oh, she's changing keys or whatever. Or my ears would just figure it out. You don't always have to know theory stuff. But when you're learning to do that, it's really helpful to be able to have a jam. If you had a jam with Sam and you said, let's jam in the key of G, he can use the G major scale and play, or G major pentatonic or E minor pentatonic. There's a few scales that he could choose. And he can jam away and you can play any of those chords in any order and what he's going to play will work really well.
Okay.
That's where we're going.
Yeah.
By the way, right? So you're going to learn a little bit of a scale and then you're going to start getting into the idea of, with the layering idea, being able to choose some notes that sound cool as a texture. I'm not trying to turn you into a lead guitar player. It'd be nice if you were able to play a nice melody, but it's a really interesting thing when we get into layering to be able to look at a scale and pick out a few notes that you could pick out individually over a chord sequence. So that's why I want you to start to be aware of keys.
I remember getting really worried because someone once said to me, you should be able to listen to a song and hear what key it's in.
No.
And that's something that I just never understood.
I can't listen to a song and tell what key it's in.
Okay.
I don't have... That's usually for perfect pitch people. They've got... some people have the ability to be able to hear any note and be able to tell what that note is. I think that you can learn it if you learn it when you're very young, but I don't know of anyone that's ever been able to learn it as an adult or a teenager. I tried as a teenager at music school and I spent a whole year, half an hour to an hour a day trying to develop it and it didn't work. So, that's the chords in the key of G. On your theory course now, I want you to start exploring... Did you get through grades 1 and 2?
Yes.
All the way?
Yep.
No problems? Did you do the test?
No.
Do the test at the end of grade 2 just to make sure that you're 100% certain on that and then go on to the third stage. See how far you can get.
Okay.
In 2 weeks, you'd probably be able to get through it. Okay? And then we're going to start hopefully hitting the chords in the key stuff.
Okay, cool.
Yeah? And it'll start to make a little bit more sense. You'll understand a bit more about harmony and theory. As a writer, that stuff can be really interesting for things like harmonies. If you understand how chords work and how harmony works, when you go to sing a backing vocal, if you're struggling to find one just using your ear, you might find that, well, what am I singing? Oh, these notes. Well, a third above those would be these notes. Okay. You can start to think like that, and when you can play it on the guitar as well, it's a really nice way of kind of getting creative with that kind of aspect. So, I think that's enough. Yeah? So recap. We've got notes on the thickest 2 strings, making sure that you remember the C, D and the E, and that you can therefore count up and back to be able to find any other note. Okay? We've got the open chords, the cage system, so exploring the C, A, G, E and D shapes, lifting fingers off, just spending 5-10 minutes, try out stuff, lift them off, get creative, see what you find.
Okay.
That morphs into writing chord progressions. So using those ideas of new chords, funky things that you find to make a chord sequence, either 4 bars or 8 bars long, not without too many fast chord changes.
Okay.
Because you're then going to record them
Yep.
and use that recording process to practice playing in time, playing with the click track in the recording software. You can listen back to it and analyze where you're dragging or where you're rushing. Also, you'll be able to see it. You'll be able to see a waveform on the screen and be able to see straight away if that, is it forwards or backwards of the click. You'll see it. Okay. We've got the chords in the key, so at least once or twice I want you to explore using the chords in the key idea. We've got the 5th string root, so the B minor. I want you to definitely be trying out that B minor chord. Okay, you can, as part of the practice, if you want to start moving the B minor chord up and down the fretboard, if you put the root note there at the 5th fret, what chord would it be? So that was B minor here with your first finger there. If you put your first finger there, what chord would it be?
C.
C minor.
C minor.
Yeah, and here would be?
D.
D minor. What if you put it there?
E.
No.
D sharp.
D
minor.
sharp minor. Okay?
Yep.
The major and minor thing is the chord shape. The sharp and flat, or no sharp or flat, what we call natural notes, is just the pitch.
Oh, okay. Yep.
So they're a separate thing. Natural is just the white notes or whatever with no sharps or flats. And then you've got sharp notes and flat notes. That's just pitch.
Okay.
Major and minor and 7 and minor 7 and 7 sharp 5 flat 9. These are chord qualities. Okay. Which is different to pitch.
Okay.
Okay. I think that should be plenty to keep you occupied for a couple of weeks.
Definitely.
Yeah. Any questions or discoveries that you want to share, or things that doesn't make sense?
Probably nothing that's not going to open a can of worms.
Right. Okay. Why? What is there one in particular?
Oh, there's a couple. The capo
Yeah.
and how that affects what note it is.
Okay.
As in, so if you put the capo there, is that still the note it is without the capo, or does it just naturally then go up one on the capo?
Okay. So if the capo is on, the notes stay the same, like relative to another instrument or a piano or whatever. If you put, is there a capo here? Yeah. So if I play something without open strings, no matter where I put the capo, nothing's changed. It's exactly the same.
Yeah.
The time that becomes where it's making a difference is to do with the open strings, which you would, and most times when you're using a capo, you're using open chords with open strings. So if I play that as a C chord, if I put the capo on at the 2nd fret and then play a C chord, it's now different, isn't it?
Yeah.
If that was a C chord, that was a C, and that note was the note C, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So if I move that whole shape up, now my 3rd finger is sitting on what note?
Do you count from there, or do you count from
No,
the capo?
just forget the capo. Just what note was it before the capo was on? That was C.
Yeah.
What note's that? C.
D.
What? C sharp.
D.
D. This is now a D chord.
Okay.
Right? It's using a C shape, but if you listen,
Okay.
there's a D chord. Listen, it sounds. Just do it without. I'm using my first finger as a capo, right?
Yeah.
It sounds. It's the same.
Okay.
If I put my capo at the 5th fret and played an A chord, still the same as a D chord. If I put my capo at the 7th fret and play a G, it's still the same. If I put it at the 10th fret and play an E,
Okay.
it's still a D chord.
So you don't change where you're counting from just because the capo's starting there?
No, I think I would rather do, if you remind me at the beginning of next lesson to do a special on capos, we'll just sit down and we'll spend, because capos are a really interesting thing. A lot of people feel they're beginnery. It's a beginner's tool, but it's not. They're a super creative, fun thing to muck around with, especially if you're getting into layering and multiple parts, because if you learn a chord progression in an open position and then put a capo further up and play the same thing again, it sounds wicked. It's really, really effective.
I've definitely
trick.
just used it for singing wise. So if I've learnt a song and I can't sing that, I'll fiddle around with the capo until I find a way that I can sing it.
Which is a really good and effective way of not having to learn a whole bunch of new chords for the song.
Yeah.
So it's useful for that as well, for finding the key, finding a key that works in a particular song with your voice. I think you understand how to use it that way already, right? Because you're doing it.
Yeah.
So what we're talking about the other way is using a capo creatively to play the same chords.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's remind me next lesson capo, and we'll have a capo
special.
session.
Okay.
If there's some other stuff that we need to broach before then, we might delay it a week. Otherwise, we'll do it next week.
Okay, that's fine.
Other question? You said there was a couple. What was the other one?
So a lot of the songs I like are piano.
Yeah.
And I want to almost impersonate what the individual notes that they're playing. And I find that I can't find where they are when I'm playing that chord that it is meant to be on the piano on my guitar, if that makes sense.
Okay, so the thing with piano is that they're bigger and louder and they can play lots more notes at the same time. So we're limited to being able to only play 6 notes. And notes that are close together on piano are really easy to play, but notes to play those same things on the guitar are much more difficult. If we want to play a C chord and we wanted to add this note, so quite a piano-y sort of. For us, it's a bit of a stretchy thing to do that, whereas on piano, those 2 notes are like right next to each other. It's really, really easy.
Okay.
they also have the advantage of being able to play the important notes of the chord with one hand and then play some other twinkly ones with the other hand.
Yeah.
So trying to emulate piano and guitar is pretty difficult, frankly. You can kind of do it a little bit because we've got advantages too. We can do fingerstyle, we can do drone strings. So on piano, doing things like this, that's really difficult because they have to move every note up one step. Some of them will move on to sharp notes, some will move on to white notes, and it becomes this.
Okay.
It's difficult. So guitar has advantages too. So it's not like piano's got it all easy, right? There's a lot of things great about a guitar. Trying to copy it is going to be
Tough.
Pretty difficult. But we can do lots of emulation stuff. At the moment, we're mainly working on the strumming and trying to keep in time. I want to stick with that for a little bit longer. But pretty soon, once I feel like you've got, when you tell me, I feel confident about the staying in time thing, then we'll start looking at how to pick out notes within a chord while you're strumming to be able to. So then it's starting to get that little bit more piano-y where we pick out individual sounds. But I think it's much better to be super confident with the strummy thing first of all.
Okay,
yeah?
cool.
Okay. Any more?
No.
No, that was it? Okay. It's important to... part of the thing about having a private lesson-y sort of situation is being able to get your questions answered. So if you think that you're going to forget them, write them down on your practice sheet so you can ask, because I think it's... you're almost certainly going to ask questions sometimes that I'm going to palm off for later and go like, that's just something that I shouldn't try and explain to you now because it'd be so complicated that it'll just bum you out or make you more confused.
Okay.
Right? But so far all your questions have been good.
Okay,
so,
good.
Yeah, all makes sense?
Yeah, definitely.
So as usual, people following along on YouTube, there'll be a lesson page on the website where I'll write down her practice routine, the things that we're going to work on, and any links to related lessons over on the site. So Tammy, say bye-bye to the good people of YouTube.
Bye.
And we'll see you all in a couple of weeks. Bye-bye.